Deathless Titans placed upon the face of the earth 3 generations of men. The first of them being men of gold. Becoming too close to gods themselves, Cronus ended their time on earth with an eternal sleep. A second generation came to be, the men of silver. Unwilling to serve the Titans and make sacrifices upon the holy altars, as all men shall do, they were condemned to dwell under the earth for all eternity. Finally, a third generation, the men of bronze, a brazen race, sprung from the ash tree. Terrible and strong are they. Join me as I tell you the tales of the men of bronze. This is Dragon's Blood. Beware Brontes. Episode 20. Gamden woke in the morning and opened his eyes. Immediately, he felt like his horse had kicked him in the head. Sitting up slowly, struggling to make his body do what he wanted. Wrapping the blanket around his shoulders, he went through his saddlebag and found his flint striker. Lighting the lamps on the table, they flickered to life, forcing Menkari to open his eyes. Wincing in pain, he closed them quickly again and said in a hoarse voice, "I feel terrible, Gamden." "Why do I feel terrible? I didn't do anything to feel this terrible." Gamden pulled out a chair, sat down, elbows on the table, and pressed his palms against his temples while he said, "You're not the only one. I feel like Sunisret took me out back and gave me a good beating. Speaking of..." Gamden reached down, picked up one of his boots, and threw it at Sunisret. Hitting him in the stomach, he sat up fast, looked around, stretched, and said, "What a great sleep! Why did you wake me up? I was having that dream again. Nothing but wine and women. And I just finished the wine. Again!" He stood up, naked head in the rafters, and began to chastise Gamden. "Next time you wake me, wait an extra half hour, so I can get to the women. Okay?" Gamden screwed his face into a look of confusion and asked, "Hey, wait. How come you feel so good and me and Menkari feel so terrible?" Shrugging his shoulders, Sunisret replied, "I don't know. Just 'cause, I guess." "What about Akhom?" "That's a good question." Gamden stood up with the blanket still wrapped around him, walked over to Akhom's bed and gently shook him while asking, "Akhom, are you awake?" Lying on his back with his eyes closed, Akhom responded, "Yes, I'm awake." Rubbing his eyes, then opening them slowly, he continued, "I would imagine that you are curious as to why you feel so terrible." Menkari piped up as he waddled across the room in his nightshirt. "Do you feel the same way as we do?" "No, I'm just tired. I didn't sleep much last night," he said as he sat up in bed. "Didn't sleep? Didn't sleep? I didn't hear a thing," exclaimed Menkari. "You must have lurked about the room. What about you, Gamden? Do you remember anything?" "I remember..." Gamden paused, thought hard for a moment, then continued, "No, just vague dreams, but they were so real." "Do you remember being in a forest?" queried Akhom. "Yes," Gamden said with apprehension. "I remember being in a clearing And Idacy was there too. She was nude. Gamden smiled with the image in his mind. She was beautiful. She is an Ampusa, responded Akhom. Menkari gasped in surprise, then said, A shapeshifter. Very dangerous. Very dangerous. How are we still alive? Gamden, why don't you get dressed and go to the caretaker, said Akhom as he got out of bed. Have him bring some breakfast and water to wash it down with. Tell him to bring it himself, and I will explain everything. With a nod, Gamden got dressed and was out the door. When Gamden returned, he had a water flagon in each hand, with the owner in tow, with a tray overflowing with fruit and dried meats for his guests. Setting the tray down on the table, the owner said with a tone of exasperation, What have you done to my door? He pointed to the broken door casing where the lock once was. Do you have any idea how much that will cost me to fix? Akhom pulled out a chair and motioned for him to sit. Having a fully armored priest of Athena, giant southern warrior, young man that could rob him blind, and a tiny old man with big eyes that seemed to look right into his soul. The proprietor didn't know if he should sit or go running down the hall for the house guard. Taking the seat offered him, he cleared his throat and said nervously, What's all this about now? Trying to sound as formidable as possible, but failing. I'm a busy man, you know. Wiping his hands on the apron hanging from his neck, he then pointed at the food. I've got 5 more rooms that want food this morning. Almost everyone woke up feeling ill. That's what I wanted to talk to you about, responded Akhom. Most of your guests have been drugged, including my 3 traveling companions. Your 3 traveling companions, but not you, eh? The caretaker was ready to set off on a tirade against the priest. That's right, interrupted Akhom. I didn't drink any water last night. Thinking on what Akhom just said, the keeper retorted, So what's that got to do with anything? I drank water last night, but I feel fine. The innkeeper wagged his finger as he continued. It was you that drugged the water. I knew it. You priests bring nothing but trouble, wherever you go. Menkari couldn't take any more of the slander and shouted, It was Idacy! It was Idacy! She tampered with the water. She is an Ampusa! He nodded his head as he breathed heavily from the emotional outburst. The caretaker had a stunned look on his face for a moment, then laughed and said, Ha! Prove it. Menkari was ready to serve up some more scorn when Akhom held up his hand for silence, then said, When we first arrived, you wanted us to pay up front because you had a rash of young men running out on their bill. If I were a betting man, I would put coins on the fact that shortly after you hired Idacy, your guests began to disappear. The owner sat up straight in his chair, crossed his arms, as a frown came across his face while he tried to formulate an argument. Unsuccessful, he said, Okay, you got me there, but I still can't believe she was behind all those things, or that she's an Ampusa. Akhom walked across the room to his bed and picked up the blanket he wrapped the severed hand in. When he reached the table where the innkeeper sat, he put the blanket down, but kept his hand on it, then said, Have you seen Idacy yet this morning? No, I haven't, and that is strange. Always on time. She won't be coming back here for some time. Maybe never. And this is why. Akhom opened up the blanket to expose the severed hand. The overpowering smell of rotten flesh instantly filled the room. Somewhat used to it, Akhom wasn't bothered, but everyone else in the room gagged uncontrollably. The putrid black flesh of the hand had maggots burrowing in and out, yellow pus soaking into the fabric of the blanket. Look at the ring on the index finger. Akhom pointed, then continued. That's the same ring she was wearing last time I saw her. I believe you! I believe you! The proprietor managed to say between convulsions. Just take it away! How can it smell so bad? She is pure evil and a shapeshifter, explained Akhom, as he wrapped the hand in the blanket again. Long dead, but still a part of our world, and able to take on any form. I don't think she can become anything larger, only the same size or smaller. After I severed her hand, she changed into a field mouse and was lost into the undergrowth. Akhom scratched his head, then said, That's all I know. Can you add anything, Minkari? Minkari closed his eyes, put his hands on his knees, searched his memory for any more information. The Impusa can use magic, apart from the ability to shapeshift. Minkari opened his eyes as he explained. She can charm, paralyze, and use other simple spells. Be very wary where she is concerned. Watch your guests in the future. If any of them, young men I mean, can't help but go to a stranger and do whatever they say, that will be her. She went undetected for a long time. Happy hunting grounds for her. She'll be back. She'll be back. Akhom interjected. Damned Impusa is strong as well. Threw Gamden over her shoulder with ease, and was still able to outrun me. I also noticed that when she uses magic, there is a smell of rotten flesh in the air. As he said it, he pointed to the hand wrapped in the blanket, reminding everyone of the scent. Must be that it takes all her concentration to keep her shape-shifted form, if that's what you want to call it. Charming a person distracts her and allows her true form to come to the surface, just for a split second. Everyone in the room sat in silence for a moment, contemplating what could have happened to them. The caretaker broke the silence by saying, I guess I owe you an apology, priest. He stood up and continued. I always thought that a priest of Athena brought trouble with him wherever he goes. But now I know otherwise. He held out his hand in appreciation. Akhom took his hand in friendship. You and your traveling mates are welcome in my establishment. Anytime. The caretaker smiled at them and was quickly out the door to tend to the rest of the guests. I need to thank you as well, said Sunisret, as he stood up and walked over to Akhom. I thought I could protect Gamden all by myself, but the wildlands are just too dangerous. He scooped up Akhom in his massive arms and hugged him with such might that the air came whooshing out of Akhom's lungs. Thank you. I think. Akhom tapped him on the shoulder and managed to squeak out, Sunisret, I can't breathe. Sorry, he said as he put him down. Gamden laughed out loud, stood up and said, We'd best be going. Daylight is wasting away, and we have a long road yet to travel. The party gathered their belongings and set off to the stables to collect the horses. Look for episode 21 of Dragon's Blood. Beware Brontes on YouTube.